Hello, students. Welcome to the third lecture of this series. We have been discussing about basics of measurement. In previous two lectures, we talked about importance of measurement in physics and possible uncertainties and errors in the measurement, identification of their sources, and ways to minimize them. And in last lecture, we talked about difference between accuracy and precision of a measurement and the errors, classification of error as a systematic error and random error, and how this is associated with precision and accuracy of a measurement. Also, we discussed uh, ethical consideration while conducting experiment, collecting data for analysis. In this lecture, we are talking about safety considerations while using scientific instruments such as handling hazardous materials, electrical safety, and radiation safety. These are few symbols in the cartoon of this slide, which just shows the signs for possible hazards. So these signs are important in a laboratory area. We must be careful while conducting experiments, doing measurements on our experiment. So the possible hazards, identification of possible hazards, and means to uh, reduce its impact and risk associated with it. This is the main theme of today's discussion. So I will be discussing one by one some common hazards in experimental physics or experimental labs. And first, we will identify these hazards and then we will try to address them one by one. So, there are various hazards associated with use of scientific instruments that researchers and scientists need to be aware to ensure their safety. Some common hazards, one is electrical hazards. So many scientific instruments require electrical power to operate, and this electrical power can pose significant risk to the user if instrument is not properly grounded or if there is a short circuit. Direct contact with live wires or exposed electrical component can cause great risks to the user. Overload power lines and faulty equipments, exposed electrical part, improper grounding, damaged insulation, wet conditions. These are some of the possible situations where these electrical hazards could be very dangerous for user working in that area. Then another very common hazard is radiation exposure. In many experiments, we need high energy radiation to analyze samples, to analyze materials, and but the exposure to this radiation can lead to very severe health conditions. Even it can cause cancer, and low level radiation exposure can also have some long term health effects. So, in the laboratories where this radiation is used for scientific analysis, the users must be very aware about the possible health hazards while working in that area. So there must be very clear understanding about the hazards, and there must be proper and well communicated to user as well as uh, following all the guidelines to protect the environment. So we must look for its benefit, but it's reduce its harmful impact. So radiations, very many instruments like X-ray machines are very common. Particle accelerators are very common in this area where we are working to analyze materials, to know their properties. So its risk imposed by this exposure should be well communicated to the users and anybody who could be who could get an impact of that. Another very important and very common type of hazard is chemical exposure in laboratory, whether you are working with in physics or any different work uh, field. Many times you have exposure to chemicals because you can't imagine a laboratory where there is no chemicals, because it is important part of it. So we must be aware about its use and risks posed by exposure. Many scientific instruments are used to analyze and manipulate chemicals, and exposure to this chemical can be hazardous. So this in this picture you see this is a symbol. This symbol is for if there is an area where radiation exposure is there, so this symbol must be there on the instrument or in the area, so you can see these symbols and be aware about that you may expose to radiation if you are not careful. These are few symbols for chemicals. So when we are handling chemicals, storing or using it, so we should be aware about possible hazards. So this awareness is also very important to ensure safety of the user and environment. Then this is also a very common type of hazard, the physical hazards, like where we have high speed rotors, moving parts, surfaces, so we should be aware about it. There are some instruments which can generate high heat or pressure, so we should be aware about the possible hazards. So this is first important thing to know, that when you know what could be the possible risk, then only you can save yourself and you can handle it. So this is very important to identify the possible hazards. So be aware about it and then follow safety protocols. There are some protocols to handle such situation. So these protocols should be aware about it and you should follow it strictly to minimize any risk of injury while using scientific instruments. Proper training, safety equipment, and safety protocols. These are very essential to ensure safety of researchers and promote safe working environment. So, in any lab where you are working, it should clearly state the safety rules, clearly state the possible hazards, and it should be the user should be given a proper training so that it can ensure the safety and safe working environment for people. Now, let us try to understand how we can handle these hazards one by one. As in previous slides, we talked about some very common hazards associated with scientific instruments. So, how we can mitigate them? How we can mitigate? We need to have a proper safety protocols and safety equipment. How to deal with electrical hazards? So to mitigate the risk of electrical hazards, scientific instruments should be properly grounded and maintained. Properly grounded किए जाएं और उनको उस पर नज़र भी रखी जाए, उसको देखा जाए, उसको जो जो उसको ऑपरेट कर रहे हैं, there should be a proper vigilance over it, that it has been maintained, and users should be trained on how to safely operate them. Users should also be aware of location of electrical outlets and avoid placing instrument near water sources to prevent the risk of electrocution. For radiation exposure, to minimize radiation exposure, users should always wear appropriate personal protective equipment. So for radiation exposure, there is some PPE, personal protective equipment, and though anybody who is working in this area must be using them, must be wearing them, such as lead aprons, gloves, and goggles. They should also follow strict safety protocols such as minimizing exposure time. Even if you are using the PPE, still you should follow safety protocol कि एक्सपोजर टाइम कम से कम रहे, मतलब जब बहुत ही जरूरी है तभी आप उस एक्सपोजर में जाएं, अदरवाइज उससे आप दूर रहें. एंड डिस्टेंस फ्रॉम रेडिएशन सोर्स, जो रेडिएशन सोर्सेज है उससे एक प्रॉपर डिस्टेंस मेंटेन रखें. मेंटेनिंग ए सेफ डिस्टेंस फ्रॉम इंस्ट्रूमेंट ड्यूरिंग ऑपरेशन whenever it is working. So it should be avoiding the exposure, avoiding it by all possible means. So there are few steps while mitigating these risks associated with. So there are few things that entry procedure, when we are entering in a lab, the proper procedure should be followed. Protective equipment should be there. There should be rescue plan. If there is a problem, there should be a plan how to handle it, and risk assessments. So all these are just different points to deal with when we are trying to mitigate the hazards associated with scientific instruments. Then few more common which we discussed in previous hazards. Let us try to डिस्कस वन बाय वन के क्या इनको हम कैसे कम कर सकते हैं. तो केमिकल एक्सपोजर है, इसके लिए हमको क्या करना चाहिए. टू रिड्यूस द रिस्क ऑफ केमिकल एक्सपोजर, यूजर शुड ऑलवेज वियर अप्रोप्रिएट पीपी. प्रॉपर ड्रेस होना चाहिए उसका, वो उसको हमेशा पहन के रखे, जैसे ग्लोव्स, लैब कोट, गॉगल्स. And they should also handle and store chemical properly, follow strict safety protocols, and label all chemical clearly to prevent accidental exposure. When you are working in a lab where there are different chemicals are there, so labeling is a very important thing. For physical hazards, to mitigate physical hazards associated with scientific instrument, users should be trained on proper handling technique and safety protocols. The training plays a very important role when we are working in any lab where physical hazards are possible. So there should always be appropriate personal protective equipment such as gloves and goggles, and aware about sharp edge, moving part, high-speed routers. It should be aware about it. In addition to these measures, it is important to have emergency procedures in place in case of any accident or injury. This includes having first aid kit readily available and ensuring that all users know how to respond to emergencies. So emergency procedures must be there, and it should be well communicated to the users working in that area. So this is a bit about, we discuss some possible hazards and how we can minimize them. Now, here one thing, like while talking about the hazards, I said that uh, training is very important. The training could be helpful while ensuring that we have minimized the risk posed by hazards, and there are some other important benefits of proper training. So training here in these slides, I will be talking about what are the factors which can improve if we provide proper training for individual using with scientific instruments. So it ensures that they are able to use instrument. It is good for instrument as well as the user. Both safety, safely वो इंस्ट्रूमेंट यूज करेगा और इफेक्टिवली यूज करेगा. तो एक तो चीज हो गया सेफ्टी. The primary reason for training is to ensure the safety of individual who will be using scientific instrument. Proper training can help user to identify potential hazards and understand how to minimize the risk or injury or harm. They can learn about the specific safety protocols and procedures that need to be followed when using certain instruments, as well as how to use PPE properly. Like you, we have seen a phase of COVID-19 in last years. So you see there are a lot of people using mask, but you are not using it properly. So it becomes useless. So you have personal protective equipments, but if you don't know how to use it properly, it is not of much use. So everybody has must have seen people wearing masks in a way that it has no meaning. So, that is why you can see from this is why we need to have a proper training. People should know why we are wearing this. Then other thing what it can improve on accuracy. So when we are making any measurement, so we are trying to have measurements which generate precise and accurate data. This is our objective. We want to do experiment to have precise and accurate data. If we don't get it, then the whole purpose is compromised. So improper use can lead to inaccurate and unreliable results. Proper training can help user to understand capabilities and limitation of the instrument they are using, as well as they know how to calibrate and maintain them to ensure accurate readings. So this is also very important in the from the point of view of the work we are doing in a laboratory. When we are trying to get some data, we are doing some measurements. So a trained person can really be very beneficial for whole process being conducted. So if you don't have proper trained person, then you may compromise with the total idea of the experiment. Safety and accuracy, these are 2 points which we discussed why proper training could be very helpful. And other 2 things which we need to look at. Efficiency. If a trained person is doing some work, so it will be very efficient. Proper training can help individual to use scientific instrument more efficiently, allowing them perform experiment and collect data more quickly and accurately. This can save time and resources and ultimately lead to more efficient and effective scientific research. Meantime, I have also observed that people have very good experimental labs, but they lack proper human resource to effectively use it. So you understand the proper trained person could be much more useful. You may save some resource. You may save some fund by by employing people, by putting people where they don't have proper training, but the whole exercise will get compromised without since a proper training was not there. So the whole objective, whole idea will be compromised. So it is very important to provide proper training to individuals who are working in such laboratories. So it is very important. And as a student point of view, I'm saying whenever you are working in any environment, in any lab, you should be well aware about importance of training. So training could be helpful for you as well as the whole project you are handling. Other important thing is, which could be training could be helpful, that is compliances. Compliances means many scientific institutions and regulatory bodies require individual to undergo specific training and certification before they can use scientific instrument. Proper training can ensure that individuals are compliant with these regulations and they are also able to use instrument legally and ethically. So when you have a proper trained person for your laboratory, it is good for all regulatory and legal and ethical purposes. So, in summary, we can say the proper training is essential for individuals who will be using scientific instrument. It promotes safety, accuracy, efficiency, and compliance, ensuring scientific research is conducted safe, effective, and ethical manner. So training is very important, and I hope it is well communicated to you that how a trained person could be more efficient, more effective, and it can do things in a very safe way. Other thing is that when those person who are working in laboratory, maybe you may have you if you visit some laboratory, you will find people who know things very well because they have been working there for a long time. So addition to training, there should be some refresher training. So in this slide, I am talking about why this regular refresher training is important. Those working in laboratory setup. The regular refresher training is crucial to ensure individuals are up to date on safety protocols in the workplace. So there are things, ये सब जो रिसर्च की चीजें हैं, यहाँ पे हमेशा चीजें अपडेट होती रहती हैं, नए तरीके से हम चीजों को समझते हैं, नए मेथड्स, और हमेशा हमको अपडेट रहना होता है. तो रेगुलर रिप्रेसर ट्रेनिंग इज कैन हेल्प द स्टाफ हु इज वर्किंग इन लैबोरेटरी टू मेंटेन इट to so that he or she is up to date about safety protocol in the workplace. What are other benefits? So one is increased awareness. Regular refresher training program can increase employees' awareness to safety procedures and protocols. It can help to reduce accidents and injuries by ensuring these employees are fully informed and equipped to handle any safety issue that may arise. Regular refresher training can increase awareness of the employee and improved compliance. By providing regular refresher training on safety protocols, individuals are more likely to understand the importance of following safety procedures and regulation, and this can result in improved compliance with safety protocol and regulation, reduce the risk of accident and injuries. So it is very important to have regular refresher training for the employees working in this setup. So these ट्रेनिंग हेल्प एक्सीडेंट का जो रिस्क है वो भी कम हो जाता है. रिफ्रेशर ट्रेनिंग हेल्प टू रीइंफोर्स सेफ्टी नॉलेज and refresh the memory of employees. So this is very important. When you go some training and refresher training course, so the memory of employees get improved. And the time when there is some emergency, there is some accident, this thing could be very, very crucial. At that time, when you do right thing, it can save a lot of resources, a lot of people. This reduces the risk of accident and injuries as employees are likely to remember and apply safety protocol in their daily work. Another is enhanced emergency response. Refresher training program can provide employee with updated information and knowledge about emergency response procedure. This can help them to respond quickly and effectively in the event of emergency, potentially saving lives and minimizing damage to property. Increased confidence. Regular refresher training can help employees to feel more confident and comfortable. This is also very important. If somebody is working in a lab, he or she should be confident and comfortable in their role. Especially when it comes to safety procedure, this can increase their motivation and willingness to follow safety protocols, which can ultimately lead to the safer workplace. So regular refresher training is critical aspect of maintaining a safe workplace. It helps to increase awareness, improve compliance, reduce the risk of accident, enhance emergency response, and increase confidence among employees. So, from a student point of view, why I am telling you that why it is important, because after you complete undergraduate course, if you are looking for a job, you may uh, apply at different laboratories as a lab assistant. That kind of role is there. That kind of jobs are there for you, and in this course, it is like a skill enhancement course. Here we are teaching you, we are telling you, we are discussing with you the things which could be relevant when you are working in an industry. Many times it happens that many people in our country are facing heat of unemployment. They join different companies working uh, in like have some laboratory, they are working in laboratory environment. So the awareness about the risks and safety protocols is very important. You should not compromise with this. Whenever you are working in a lab setup, when you are doing a job, you must be aware about the importance of work and your safety. You should not compromise this thing. So, from a student point of view, it is important to know all that things. So that is why it may not be relevant for you as of now, but in future, whenever you are looking for a career in in science, so you may have to deal with laboratory setup, and in laboratory setup, there is possible hazards, and there must be some way to minimize these the effects, and proper safety protocols and proper training is the key to ensure that safety. Then here protective equipment is very critical component of workplace safety, as it can protect workers from injuries and hazards. So here is an overview of some common safety equipment. Protective IVS, like in many places when you are working where chemical exposure are there, flying debris are there, UV rays, radiation. So all that things could be harmful for you. So many times it happens that protective equipments are there, but people just don't use it. जैसे कि आप अपने आसपास ही देखिए, बहुत लोग मोटर बाइक चलाते हैं एंड दे डोंट वांट टू वियर हेलमेट, और और भी बहुत सी ऐसी चीज जिसमें हम लोग ध्यान नहीं रखते, तो वो कितने तरह की प्रॉब्लम्स क्रिएट कर सकते हैं. You should be aware about it, and whenever you're working in any environment where these uh, protocols are there, you should follow these protocols. There is nothing great about not following the protocols, not wearing protective equipment. So there is nothing great about it. And from a student point of view, as a future worker, future employee in a in such an environment where these protective equipments are important for your own safety. The protective eyewears includes glasses, goggles, face shields. They can protect eyes from chemicals, flying debris, UV rays. तो ये तो पहले ये चीज क्यों जरूरी है ये हम जाने एंड क्या क्या और ध्यान रखना चाहिए. तो इट शुड फिट प्रॉपरली. जो इक्विपमेंट है ये आपको फिट है कि नहीं है. प्रोवाइड एडिक्वेट कवरेज. ठीक से कवर कर रहा है कि नहीं जो हम कवर करना चाह रहे हैं. एंड बी मेड फ्रॉम मटेरियल दैट आर रेजिस्टेंट टू इम्पैक्ट केमिकल्स एंड हीट. और जिस सब मटेरियल से बना है वो ठीक है कि नहीं. तो ये सब हमारे रोजमर्रा की चीजें भी हैं. जैसे हम लोग जब हेलमेट खरीदते हैं तो ये देखते हैं कि उसमें वो ठीक है कि नहीं. सस्ता वाला खरीद लिया तो काम नहीं चलेगा. तो सिमिलरली विद ऑल equipments also should be should not compromise with the quality of that. Gloves. Gloves come in a variety of material that are used to protect hands from chemical, sharp objects, and other hazards. Common material for gloves use latex, nitrile, and vinyl. They should be selected based on a specific hazard of the task and should fit properly to ensure maximum protection. Respirators. Respirators are used to protect workers from inhaling harmful dust, fumes और gases. ये सब बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है और बहुत बार हम लोग देखते हैं कि लोग इस सब इन्वायरमेंट में काम करते हैं एंड दे डोंट यूज इट एंड दे फील इट इज नॉट गोइंग टू इम्पैक्ट देम. बट इट इज नॉट. इट इज गोइंग टू इम्पैक्ट यू. मे बी कुछ ऐसे इम्पैक्ट्स होते हैं जो आपको तुरंत महसूस नहीं होते. इम्पैक्ट यू इन लॉन्ग टाइम. दे कम इन वेरियस टाइप. कई सारे के रेस्पिरेटर्स होते हैं. एयर प्योरीफाइंग respirators where filter out harmful particles are powered air purifying respirators which use battery powered blower to force air through the filter. तो ये सारा चीज होता है डिपेंडिंग अपॉन किस तरह के लैब में काम करें. हम लोग जनरल बात कर रहे हैं तो हम कोई लैब स्पेसिफिक इक्विपमेंट की बात नहीं, एक जनरल बातें कर रहे हैं. जहाँ भी कुछ हजार्ड्स हैं उसके लिए कुछ प्रॉपर सेफ्टी प्रोटोकॉल्स होते हैं और प्रॉपर इक्विपमेंट होते हैं जिनको हमको यूज करना होता है. लैब कोड्स. जहाँ पे कुछ इस तरह का रिस्क है वहाँ पे हमको लैब कोट पहनना होता है. मेनली केमिस्ट्री लैब में अगर हम लोग जाते हैं या कोई ऐसा लैब होता है जो क्लीन लैब होता है वहाँ पे पहनते हैं. या ऐसा कुछ रेडिएशन का रिस्क है तो भी हमको एक लैब कोट्स पहनने होते हैं. देयर आर मेनी ways, many tasks where we need to have lab coats और जैसा रिस्क है उस तरह का लैब कोट. हार्ड हैट्स. जैसे हम लोग हेलमेट की बात कर रहे थे उसी तरह का. जब हम कुछ ऐसा कर रहे हैं कुछ फॉलिंग ऑब्जेक्ट्स बम्स इलेक्ट्रिकल हजार्ड्स है तो वहाँ पे हमको कुछ होना चाहिए. ये प्रॉपरली फिट होना चाहिए. इंडस्ट्री का जो स्टैंडर्ड है उसको फॉलो करना चाहिए और पहले से टूटा फूटा ना हो. Safety shoes. Many times we need safety shoes protect feet from injuries caused by heavy objects, sharp material, and electrical hazards. They should meet industry standard and will made from materials that are slip resistant, puncture resistant, and provide adequate support. तो ये जो इक्विपमेंट हैं सेफ्टी इक्विपमेंट दे आर नॉट we are aware about this. Very this should be standard और प्रॉपरली फिट होना चाहिए जो भी पहन रहा है उसको. सेफ्टी प्रोटोकॉल्स की ज़रूरत क्या है. क्यों हमको ये सब कुछ लिखा होना चाहिए. जहाँ पे कुछ होता है वहाँ पे ये सब प्रॉपर लेबलिंग होनी चाहिए. प्रॉपर तरीके से लिखा जाता है. ये सब की ज़रूरत क्यों है. क्योंकि अगर हम एक सेफ और हेल्दी वर्क प्लेस चाहते हैं तो सेफ्टी प्रोटोकॉल्स बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट. क्या क्या सेफ्टी प्रोटोकॉल्स हैं उसमें जैसे बोला प्रॉपर वेंटिलेशन. जहाँ भी कहीं आप काम कर रहे हैं तो प्रॉपर वेंटिलेशन इज क्रूशियल टू इंश्योरिंग दैट वर्कर्स आर नॉट एक्सपोज्ड टू hazardous material substances. This include maintaining adequate air exchange rate, controlling temperature and humidity level, and ensuring that ventilation systems are regularly inspected, cleaned, and maintained. Labeling of hazardous materials. जैसे मैंने अभी बोला था कि हमको इसको प्रॉपर लेबलिंग करना बहुत जरूरी है. Labels should clearly identify the substance, its hazards, and appropriate handling and storage procedure. Employers should provide proper training how to read and understand these labels. Emergency procedures are very important. Emergency procedures should be established and communicated to all workers. These procedures should include evacuation plan, first aid measures, protocols on dealing with spills, fires, and other emergencies. Regular drills should be conducted to ensure that workers know how to respond in an emergency situation. So all that aspects are very, very, very important. Personal protective equipment should be provided and used whenever it is necessary. This include gloves, eye protection, respirators, hard hats, and other equipment. Employers should select and provide appropriate PPE for specific hazard of each task and ensure that workers are trained how to use and maintain it. Safe work practices. Safe work practices should be stabilized and communicated to all workers. This include procedures for handling and using equipment, proper lifting technique, protocols for working in confined spaces. Workers should be trained on these procedures and maintained to ensure that they are followed. Monitored to ensure that they are followed. So proper ventilation, labeling of hazards material, emergency procedures, PPE, and safe work practices are critical safety protocol for organizations should implement to ensure safe and healthy workplace. By stabilizing these protocols, providing appropriate training, employers can minimize the risk of accident, injuries, and illness in the workplace. So all that things are very important, and it should be followed when we are dealing with any lab environment. Thank you so much for being here. In next class, we will discuss but some of the basic instruments which we are going to cover in this unit. The first unit we talked about basics of measurement and aspects related to it. In next classes, we will be talking about some particular basic instruments. Thank you so much.